I'm not too sure if the answer is always in one huge massive body like a big ship trying to engineer solutions for dozens of areas. I do think that if you had a lot of little HaiJalos, a lot of people boosting civic action, awareness, that we would be better off.
And several other, topics or areas of this before we actually came to climate change, because we felt it was super important to first understand what is the mindset that got us here. Sport is somebody's God. Art is someone finds God in art. Somebody finds their deeper self and their deeper meaning through, I don't know, dance, through gardening, wherever it is that you find that space to settle down and contemplate, take it. And I feel like the will to act, or the resolution to act in a way, it comes in those quieter moments. We take civic action in a way that is fun, and that is a lot of personal growth in it. There is room for growing as a person, as a spiritual being, as a skilled being, and in the process you are also serving your community. What's more beautiful than that?
Hello there and welcome to GoGreenGuru Sustainability in Action. In today's episode, we bring to you the story of HaiJalo. A story of possibilities, of how, when given this space, youth can become spearheaders of change, where they can rewrite the narrative, all the while discovering themselves. Set in Champawat, in the Pahadi area of India, this is a story of how people can come together to make things happen. We have in our midst today Bombil Ruth, who started HaiJalo almost 3 years ago and now has a whole team of Pahadi youth supporting this beautiful initiative, where people take ownership for themselves and for their society, for their environment. So whether you're an educator or someone who's on a path of trying to do something for Mother Earth, for your community, if you're on that path of exploration, I'm sure a little something in this episode will call to you. Hello Bombil, welcome to our show. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. Could you talk a little more about the place you are in, where it is, and how it is like, how is life like?
Absolutely. I live in a tiny district called Champawat, which is on the Indo-Nepal border. Champawat is somewhere between Pithoragarh, also touches the district of Almora. It's in Uttarakhand, and it's not very well known, thankfully. That way we don't have too many tourists here. And the place has retained a lot of its natural beauty. Champawat is in the Kumaoni region, so people who live here are Kumaoni. They speak Kumaiya, which is a local dialect. When you say Pahadi, Pahadi is actually a whole bunch of languages spoken in all the mountainous areas here. But here we speak Kumaiya. When I say we, I don't speak Kumaiya as yet. I can understand. So women have to be careful when they're gossiping around me. But yeah, that's the place. It's about 1650 meters at that altitude. And we have a lot of native forests still in this area, lots of original forests that have been here for a long time. Beautiful location, speckled with your deodar, tall conifers. You have cedar, which is deodar. There is oak, a lot of oak, different kinds of oak trees. Lots of berries that grow here. So springtime is usually for letting berry juice trickle down your hands and being greedy and eating as many berries as you can.
Oh, lovely, lovely.
So HaiJalo is the small organization that I run here. It is HaiJalo means ho jayega in Kumaoni. Now the usage of the word is quite interesting. So if you have, a very, very heavy sack and somebody is trying to lift it and you're saying to them, ki, don't lift it, it's too heavy. And they'll say, Are hai jalo, which is a way of saying, oh, it will happen, you have faith, something will emerge, a solution will emerge. And that the beauty of it is in that, is in like people believing with all their heart that a solution is in the making.
Yeah.
I think I needed that positivity in my life because I'm someone who's like, I operate from worst case scenario. Like before starting anything, my mind is already playing out the 50 different ways it can go wrong. Uh, I needed HaiJalo. I needed a good big dose of HaiJalo in my life. So we started it. And our journey is very much characteristic of the name because it's a small organization. I work with youth in the area, and our what we would love to see. I don't know if I'll call it an aim or an objective mission. There are all these big words, but um, I think we want to see people contributing to their communities more and more and believing in the strength of community. Uh, I think I want to see it dawn on people like, oh, this is what we can do, huh? If we all get together. Um, and whether that is youth, for women, for resolving some of the most pressing social issues and environmental issues, and whatever we can do at the local level. I'm not too sure if the answer is always in one huge, massive body like a big ship trying to, engineer solutions for dozens of areas. I do think that if you had a lot of little haijalos, a lot of people boosting civic action, awareness, advocacy, pushing for conversations between the government and people in different places, that we would be better off. It is possible because the sense of ownership for things turning out the way we want increases from there, right? So that's what we do. In its current form at HaiJalo, we were bringing in youth from some of the smallest villages of this district of Champawat. They live with us for 3 months and we work on some kind of a social issue. Mm, at the same time, they will learn English and computers, which is something they don't really get that education in government schools over here. It's not easy, especially in the schools that are in far-flung areas. So we're mostly working with youth once they've cleared their 12th grade. There are very few exceptions where someone dropped out of school after their 10th and then they come to us. So for 5 months, they would be learning a bit of English and computers, but also working on social issues. Our very first batch, we were really just like dabbling in this. We didn't know what we were doing. We started out with a couple of youth coming here to the house. This was during the first lockdown for coronavirus. Um, we went around the village collecting cloths from people, and we had managed to raise some money through donations. There were a number of families that were struggling because men who had migrated out for work had come back home. Income sources were, depleting. Savings were depleting. And what we said is, let's give people cloth and let them stitch it into bags, cloth bags, which we then distribute. We just give it off to shops over here for them to use instead of plastic. It was a great experiment. It was really awesome. I had youth in the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grades working on these projects. Later on, we chose a couple of them. They would receive a small stipend, very small amount, something like 600 rupees a month, and they would train here. They would work on social issues. So during that time, we tried to understand menstrual untouchability in the mountains and do some work around that on menstrual awareness. We we worked on a bit of plastic pollution, collecting packets of plastic or multi-layered packaging for your wafers, biscuits, etc., and separating them as per company wise and sending it back to the companies. Like, here's the waste that you sent to our mountains. Um, it's just turning into plastic pollution here, so please deal with it. Or maybe, fulfill your EPR, your extended producer responsibility in this area as well, not just in big cities like Dehradun, Mumbai, Delhi, and other places. So yeah, I think that's how we began. Some of the youth suggested that, one of them came back actually, Pankaj, saying that, mm, Bombil, this is a really good program. Yeah, I really wish more youth could come to this, because I only realized how it changed me about 3 or 4 months after the program. I could see the changes in myself. Why don't we give it a structure, and do something with it, take on more people? I said, yeah, okay, let's try that. And we managed to scrunch up a little bit of funding from family, friends, and really a lot of beautiful, beautiful people who believe in, what we were trying to do, coming to our aid. They make me blush. And we started the first batch. We brought in youth from some really remote areas. We had two girls whose village was 13 kilometers walking from a motorable road. So they would walk 13 kilometers to their inter-college, to their school, and back to be able to complete their 12th grade. Um, we had people like that. We had youth coming to us from homes which were rife with domestic violence. We had a number of boys who were feeling very pressured about what are they going to do with their lives, and how will they make it in the world out there. So in the first batch, the formal batch that we ran, we had 8 graduates. It was a 3-month batch. We did some pretty daring stuff. In the second batch, we said, okay, it's really hard when we're working on multiple social issues. Let's just pick one and work on that. So we picked substance abuse. The students, we had about 10 students in that batch. We worked on substance abuse. We began with visiting the local de-addiction center to learn what is really substance abuse from people who are working very closely on it. We had online meetings with people who had overcome their addictions. We met with a drug and alcohol counselor. We read, watched videos, and this was the entire team together, the facilitators, the students, all of us together. And I think in our final activity, what we did was we did a pedal yatra, walking a little walk across the district. So we had two teams of youth. These are 17, 18-year-olds, like 18-year-olds, not 17, and walking from 65 kilometers away from the town within a week's time, going through villages, staying overnight wherever they can find place, in a panchayat ghar, in an abandoned shop, in a mandir, spending time doing bhajans with the Babaji, and walking all the way through villages, talking to women who are victims of domestic violence, witnessing firsthand how people are drinking in dhabas in broad daylight, um, seeing young kids standing around and watching older men gamble. These are some of the things, the stories that our trip was made of, and walking the entire way. And that walk was very important to be able to reflect on a lot of things, for these youth to be able to push themselves, to do things they never thought they could do before, to learn about teamwork, to learn about supporting each other, even in difficult times. Yeah, and we did activities in around 20 villages, all kinds of different things. Um, and finally, we did some narebazi in the town. When we came back over here, we invited a paralegal volunteer to sit with us and listen to our experiences.
So you worked with HaiJalo, working with the youth, helping them feel more empowered to, be more involved in society with environmental concerns, to help them discover themselves, to help them grow as people. What is the role of youth actually in creating a more sustainable world? So, what is their role, and how can we empower them to actually achieve their potential in that? we could share some stories from HaiJalo, how you are working on this.
Yeah. For youth, they they have the power of choice right now. So the world is such that you can do multiple things. You can be involved in multiple areas. That power of choice, add to that the knowledge that they can, you know, they can take in with discretion, and the will to act. This is a powerful combination for youth. Um, and what's there to gain from it? I would say the most important thing, probably more than like the outcome and all, yes, if we are able to pull back from climate change, if we are able to avert some of the worst consequences, then of course that's great. But to build a kind of narrative where we don't see ourselves as just receivers, as the masters of the planet, as the only species that matters, but to write a new story where we are one of the many beings on the planet. We are not the most important, but we do have a very special gift, and that is the gift to think, act, and to act in favor of all other beings. I feel like if together the youth are able to script this narrative and to act it out, with their choices, with what they choose to buy, with how much they choose to consume. And that's another big role, right? Is to move away from certain roles. The role of a consumer, of someone that's just, how you consume, or as in, I think they'll always be consuming, but I would say in a more conscious manner, right? So there is a lot of scope for this, and think that in the process, they will learn a lot about themselves. And when you serve community, you are unknowingly or knowingly serving parts of yourself. You are serving your higher purpose, and you're realizing things, you're learning things along the way about what you stand for, what your thoughts are about things, what is your opinion, what are the values on which those opinions rest, what are the decisions that keep you awake at night. And yeah, these are, experiences that I would wish for many, many youth. Because unless we have these, we're just moving through life. And I think, in that sense, probably to take what is popularly known as the hero's journey for each one of them, that will be a story worth scripting. I think it would be history. It would be not just history. It will be what we have learned from history and how we are, actively rewriting it.
That's a beautiful take on the potential of what youth can be. So, how do you think we can actually do this in reality in our current context? So, maybe you've done a lot of experiments with HaiJalo, with the rural youth, Pahadi youth over there, and you've helped them maybe learn to question, learn to explore. How have you been doing this, and how can maybe we do this on a larger way as well? How can we make this the new narrative where we all learn, we question, we act? How can we make this happen?
For youth or for people, I think it's or for people who are not really in, the first half of their life, I feel like the answer is not very different. I would speak about like two things. One is at the individual level, maybe, and one is at the systemic level. Um, at the individual level, I feel like the first thing to do is uh, a lot of self exploration and growing as a person, but not necessarily in the way we understand growth, not growing in just knowledge, in degrees, in being able to, snag a really great job that with a six-figure salary. Um, I feel that one of the big tools for growth is contemplation, slash spirituality, in whatever form people choose to dip into this or to explore questions in their mind, questions that they are suppressing a lot of the times, or things that you know create a small disturbance or an annoyance within. When you read disturbing articles in the newspaper, when you're feeling a rush of climate anxiety, when you see something that you don't have the time to change, or you tell yourself you don't have the time to do anything about it. I feel that the answer to a lot of this is to really get with a group or do something that leads you to sit and think, to sit and contemplate. Um, and in whatever form one explores their spiritual side, whether it is through a particular religion, um, some kind of, if whatever is a person's God, sport is somebody's God, art is someone finds God in art. Somebody finds their deeper self and their deeper meaning through, I don't know, dance, through gardening, wherever it is that you find that space to settle down and contemplate, take it. That is the rarest and most expensive thing in the world right now that most people don't even know they need. Um, and I feel like the will to act, or the resolution to act in a way, it comes in those quieter moments. It does not come when we're pushing ourselves from one thing to the next. How to do this? And that's a good question, because it's tricky. It is not something that ideally, it's not something that we think of and we say, okay, I need to get spiritual. You know, there are some ways, like you join a class, join a yoga class, commit yourself to a hobby, anything where you can immerse yourself, where there's time for the mind to settle and to come alive in itself. Um, Move around with that kind of crowd. And this also works for if you're trying to change your habits, if you're trying to eat healthier, if you're trying to switch to organic food, go to the organic farmers market in your city. uh, find out who are people who are farming organically around. Instead of taking a vacation to a fancy destination, um, try out one of the farms that is in the vicinity of your city. So, by changing or by moving around with people who are interested in something similar, I think that sets the foundation for exploring one's own interest in a certain area. So that's something that can be done. So I feel like a lot of it at the spiritual level. Another part of what I'm talking about is somewhere that realization needs to come that I am not superior. We are not superior. Yes, like all of us are going to suffer. And a lot of, think about species that have gone extinct. A lot of them have already suffered, the wrongdoing, or um, or an unnatural death is how I would put it. So I think the realization that, the questioning, why am I here? If I'm not superior, why have I been given this brain that thinks this way? Am I just some anomaly in evolution? Or do I actually have a purpose that is greater than roti, kapada, makan, bangla, gadi, whatever it is? Is there something more than that? Mm, so yeah, I think spirituality is an amazing tool, and whether one finds it in a monastery, in roaming in the mountains, or whatever it is, but yeah, to just tear away from vanity, to tear away from short and instant gratification, and look for deeper meaning. Uh, I feel that is important. Secondly, once one knows, if a person or if a youth or any person, feels that there's something more they can do, to answer that call to leadership is one of the greatest services that one can do for the earth right now. And um, first, I'll explain why I feel that is so, right? There are not many people, not enough kidas in the world. There is a kida inside a lot of people. When I say a kida, I mean there is a bug that is pushing you in a direction that flows away from the mainstream, that branches off into a different kind of possibility for a different kind of world. Answering that call to leadership not only serves the earth, it serves other people that are taking that journey. It it will bring you to a community where you feel more at peace, more at home, more like yourself. um, it will it will drive you crazy, it will break you down, it will push you to your limits. um, Mostly what I have realized though is that you're not entirely alone in that. There are so many others going through that journey, and they're more willing to share bits of themselves, their experiences, their strengths, their networks, than you find in a world where people are just moving ahead like a herd, or moving through life waiting for somebody else to take the lead, to do something different, or saying that, okay, you know, I'm making that much money, I will spend this much on a vacation, this much I will save for rainy day slash medical bills, and this teeny tiny bit I will give back to the earth. Or basically, I'm saying there's a whole bunch of people that are just right now benefiting from being allowed to exist on the planet without caring for it, right? And to break away from that itself is an act of leadership, uh, because it takes a lot of guts to do that. And it takes a lot, it's a journey of self discovery. Answer that call, take that journey. How do you take that journey? Once again, find others that are taking it. Um, Planning is really important if you want to branch out into an alternative way of living, if you want to branch out into an eco-conscious lifestyle, if you want to start your own organization, if you want to join an organization or give your time somewhere else. Plan it in a way that it's a smooth transition and that you're not suddenly turning your life topsy turvy, because that will just add to your worries. What is the call that you're actually answering to? Why do you want to do this? And how will you do it in a way that least disrupts your status quo, or where you can be at peace? I think that's how I would say it. And when I say you or the person in question, it also means everyone in your close, in the vicinity of your heart, your family, your friends who are closest to you, your existing networks and contacts and systems that matter to you. The ones that you want to, you don't, where you want to consciously rock the boat with, people you need to do that with. So I think that's one thing. um yeah, and finally, when I say at the systemic level, I think one of the systems that could change, that would that could be game changing for everyone, is education, right? Because not everyone is growing up in families that are either eco conscious or community oriented anymore. We cannot fight this just as individuals popping up and doing something. This has to be done through on the backs of small communities, on with the power of people coming together. And um, that's not a learning that one often finds in one's family, because usually families are made up of caregivers and people who are earning, and they're also busy doing that, and sometimes there's not enough time to focus on these kind of values, or to sit and help or guide one's kids through this exploration. That's where I think schools, colleges, the education system play a vital role. Right now these systems are churning out basically for a very capitalistic world. And I'm by no means an expert on capitalism or communism or any of that stuff. I wasn't paying attention in class, to be very honest. But mm, what I mean is that there are a handful, what I observe is that there are a handful of companies or organizations that are speeding ahead to the top, um, that slowly are, taking with them, or they require people to keep them going, and not functioning very, what would I say, very consciously, not so much like their main motive is still profits. It's not, they are not social enterprises, they are businesses, they are enterprises. And the way it should always have been is that every organization should have had, every money making entity, profit making entity, should always have had a triple bottom line. I don't think social enterprise, the way we say, there's farming and then there's organic farming. So farming is where you normally do farming, and you put your chemicals and use what you call it, chemical pesticides and fertilizers in the soil. But organic farming is used to denote that, okay, this is a special kind of farm, whereas this should have always been called farming, and we should have been calling the other one, this is a less environmentally friendly way, or this is chemical farming. Similarly, I feel like with businesses, there are businesses or enterprises and then social enterprises. Every organization should always have had at least two bottom lines: one where you're making money, and one where you are not causing any harm to the environment. You should at least have been neutral in that sense. So I feel like right now that is not the story. When we look at ourselves as a whole big unit, or let's break it down in a way that people can observe in their own localities, right? Where are you shopping at? Are you shopping at a big department store, at a mega mart? um, and is that making one organization more powerful? How would you feel if you were living in a community or in a space where there were smaller traders but more people that had control over the market, more vendors essentially, and more people benefiting from that? How would you feel about products that are not having to travel that far to get to you, but if you were consuming locally? So I feel that this notion, or this way of being, this, for this to become the new normal, this is what has to become the new normal for change to happen. And uh, people are, and the education that we give our children, what we tell them the world is supposed to be like, what are you part of building? What are we training you to build? Are we training you? Are we teaching you in a way that you just go ahead and you feed these systems and you become cogs in those machines? Or do we educate in a way that we are also willing to receive learning, and that we are educating for a better tomorrow? What is the goal of education? And I feel that the more, for this, we do require more alternative schools, more organizations working with communities and community development, more spaces where a person can come and and have a different realization, or have that realization about, hey, what is going wrong, क्यों इतना बिगड़ा हुआ है, and what is my role in this, मुझे क्या करना है? So I feel that in terms of that systems, of course, the education system is going to be huge. And possibly another one is all of your various entities working directly for environment. They need a lot more say, a lot more power, a lot more autonomy. Whether it is forest departments on the ground, government-led forest departments, whether it is people working with tribes, people working with indigenous folk. Yeah, whether it is anybody into any kind of who's spurring green businesses on. So I feel like, rather than these just being the side dishes, they need to come to the fore. They need to be empowered in a big way, and they need to at the risk of making mistakes and losing out and then being held responsible, but they need to be given more autonomy. They have to be able to say, we think this will work, we want to try it, and be given the chance to do those kind of things. And I don't know what I can possibly give as an example. Um, I can tell you one thing, that in Champawat we have, or all across the Kumaon, there are a lot of pine trees because these were brought in during the British, when the British were ruling India. Lots of pine, and pine is a hardy species. I have nothing personally against the tree, but it's not great for water conservation. It's not. It has a tendency to not allow anything to grow on the in the understory. So, and the forest department's hands are pretty tied here because there is a no felling rule above 1,000 meters. So if they wanted to experiment, I'm just saying, I'm not saying I know that they do want to experiment, but if they wanted to experiment with changing lands that are under pine right now to more native forests, how do they do that? Unless somebody takes a decision quickly somewhere that it needs to be tested. So yeah, there are these things. So if you ask me, this is a good starting point for people, is to actually start asking questions that matter and answering them yourself.
So at HaiJalo, how do you guys do this? How do you build that spirit of questioning and finding those answers, going on that whole exploration? How have the fellows been doing that?
Yeah,
How has that journey been like for you
yeah.
as a
It has
community?
been quite a journey because I also have to admit that I am a product of the same education system in an urban area that has existed for a long time. And my own journey has been one of learning, learning to share space, learning to not need, like, to kind of trim my ambitions for being the smartest person in the room. Um, and in that sense, I feel like we're trying to create that balance. But despite the fact that I'm the only urban origin person on the team right now, everybody else here is from these areas, and I think I try to learn from them as much as possible. That's one thing. We have uh, we have decided we've increased our work day by half an hour, and in that half an hour, we do meditation and exercise. The entire team together does this every day. Uh, it brings us closer together. It creates the space for contemplation. It it serves as a reminder that your physical body and what it needs and its movement is very important. Um, and creating that work life balance is one way that we've been trying to do this. So at HaiJalo, and I'm sure like a lot of funders or potential funders will not be happy to hear this, but at HaiJalo, we work only 6.5 hours in a day. So we might come to work at 8:30 in the morning or 8 o'clock, and we'll be out by 3 p.m., 3:30. And we feel that is essential because if you give your entire daylight hours to just your job, and by that I mean getting ready to go to your job, the commute, working, commuting back, and winding down, then essentially you're only left with non-daylight hours, with night hours, um, to from dusk to dawn, to give to yourself, to your family. And the question is, that really enough? You know, uh, Could it be that we have pushed ourselves too hard? And that's one of the reasons that we're not in connect with ourselves nor our societies anymore. So I think one of the conscious decisions is to have a shorter working day, but to have a fruitful, a productive working day, and to create space for learning. So we're always, we even though we don't have a dedicated budget for capacity building, we're not it's not holding us back. We connect with people, we ask them to take sessions for us, we go and visit departments locally, we do our own intelligence gathering. We're trying to make sense of our world and make more informed decisions about our projects. So that's something that we're trying. Uh, Also, all of us have a journal everybody in the team has a journal where they write down their thoughts. Um, and we try to have one-to-one conversations with all of the staff. I try to do it at least once a month, and may not always be in a very formal way. Sometimes it will just be, hey, walk with me, you know are you going to the market? Let's take a walk together. And then along the way, we'll talk work, we'll talk life, we'll talk family. It will be a holistic conversation, because as individuals, we are holistic beings. We are made of much more than just our professional value. So yeah, being able to do that. Mm, Whenever possible, we have a center where we usually use it to seek shelter from the cold or rain, and to operate from. But we do like to sit out in the sun together, all of us, and just like be sunning our hands and working there or talking. We sometimes will say, let's just go and work from the forest today. You know, we've also started doing a little farming, because we've been working on working towards doing something about climate change. We thought it was essential, since we are from a rural area, to do some work related to farming. So we planted chilies this year, and palak, um, radish, yeah, a couple of things. But that, I think this is what we did on Gandhi Jayanti as well. We're like, no, and we're not going to make a big hoopla about it. We're not going to bring in a banner and click photographs with it, because this is what we should be doing. This is what everyone just should be doing. If you're just consuming 365 days a year, your entire life, so for 60 or 70, 80 years, you have never stepped foot in a field. You don't know what these plants look like. It's not a criticism as much as I feel bad, because you're losing out on something. This is magic in the working. If you don't explore nature, you don't understand magic. You won't believe in magic. You know, you won't really be able to touch the plinths of your spirituality. There's so much to be explored there, and we try and do that. We try and create the space to do that amid all the other stuff, the report writing, the working with youth, mobilization, organizing activities. Um, that's where it also comes to things like, advocacy, or taking action. uh, as I think I mentioned before, we had been trying to get meetings with several departments to talk about what their plans are for climate change. And according to a 2014 action plan for Uttarakhand state, the forest department is the nodal agency for leading this plan. We are now 9 years from then, and it was so hard to get a meeting with them. They gave us such a runaround until finally this tiny organization in its tiny district, that is HaiJalo, and we said we're going to file a complaint. And we called the chief minister's complaint helpline, lodged a complaint. We got a call back saying, what happened? And we said, this is the problem. Every time we need to meet with a government officer, they don't have a schedule, they don't have a calendar of sorts, I suppose. We're always just scrambling, writing letters, dropping it at their office, calling up to 15, 20 times to follow up on one meeting. You have to give us 1 hour, and we spend like a good 5 hours or 6 hours just trying to get that meeting. When we come there, and we're made to wait. I have been to meet the three different district magistrates in Champawat, because they also change so frequently. And this is what I meant about systems, that systems need to change. Unless there's one person rooted in a place for long enough, how do they follow up on anything? How do they lead? How do they build an ownership for anything? So I have been to meet district magistrates here, and every time I have waited for at least an hour, nothing less than that. So, yeah, and we felt this needs to change. So, speaking up, taking that action, filing that complaint, saying what is not right. It takes a lot of guts, because the minute you do it, you seem like the complaint box. You seem like somebody who's rocking the boat, who's upsetting the way that systems are, or not able to understand that, oh, they have their own issues. Hey, come on. you've had these issues for years. You should have figured out a way around them already. For how long does, you know, do we are partners in this? If you're going to do something, you can't do it without people. If we want to be governed, we can't do it without you. But it should be an equal relationship. And I think teaching youth that, like, how do you see the government? Most youth here aspire to government jobs, and they spend 2 or 3 months in HaiJalo, and if I never say one mean thing about a government department, if I never call out one incompetency or incompetent action, most of our students will still leave this program feeling disillusioned and not wanting to work with the government, because all the officers they meet along the way are far from inspiring. All the systems we have been, called to schools to do career, I mean, to talk about the Hejalo program and mobilize, but on the way out we sign a register saying we've done career counseling. And that's how it works, checking the boxes. And I think how to slowly move away from that is something that Hejalo is dabbling in right now. How do we play our role as people who voice their displeasure, or people who can dissent um, in a way that actually helps the system eventually, and not just for the sake of finding a release for frustration. So these are things that we are experimenting with. These are our own learnings. And I think in that sense, I would really love to network with other organizations that are finding success in these areas and say, hey, how are you doing it? Please tell us, because we're sinking here a lot of the times. Um, some other things that we are doing is creating spaces for youth here to talk about themselves, their lives, their pains, their hurts, their goals, their fears. Um, no such place exists, sadly, for youth. And typically in the mountains, people are not so expressive about these things. Women a little more than men. And that too only sometimes. For youth and children are simply just they grow up believing that you respect your elders, love your people younger than you. So you play with those younger than you, and you can kid around with them. And when you see somebody enough as an authority figure, you just bow, not bow, but you just take ashirwad, and you don't question. You don't talk to them about your feelings, about what's hurting you, what's ailing you. And I feel like somewhere in that process, or what's happening is that they're not speaking to anyone. They're not talking to anybody about what they're going through. They witness, a lot of them witness domestic violence, if not in their own homes, in their neighborhoods for sure. They're witnessing it. Substance abuse, very common now in the mountains. Um, Poverty, not being able to afford to go to the nearest town, which is 6 hours away, to go to Haldwani, where the good hospitals are, and get checkups done, and what that can do to a family. So there's no space for them to express this. So creating safe spaces where we all can sit together, and we do this with every batch, with every group of people that comes in once a year. We sit down for 2 3 days, and we all just share. We talk about our life stories. We talk about the parts that had us really, really, really down. Mm, and at least there is that release, there. And that's how together as a community, you're not the only one holding your own hurt and walking around. Now it is a group of people holding each other as they hold that hurt. And that is that is special. So I feel like this is what we are trying to do out here, and it's yielding good results. I think that if um, I've heard youth say things like, that I used to be a very angry person. I used to be angry all the time, and meditation has really helped me. um, I We get a lot of youth saying that I couldn't speak confidently in front of people, and now I can. Um, yeah. Also, how we're another thing that we're doing, which I feel is truly special, is at our own level doing some research. Um, with our current batch, which is the third batch of youth that are in training, uh, they decided that we want to do some work in on the topic of caste. So we banded together and we formed a little, we did a little campaign called Yoiche. Yoiche is a Kumaya words for this is it, this place, right? So what we wanted to do was mark the period in history, mark this time as a time from here on out, people are going to move away from caste discrimination. How do we know this? So we interviewed around 300 youth from the nearby degree college, and we asked them questions like, do you believe in caste? Do you follow caste norms? And about 61% of them said, we don't follow. Yes. 10% said, we don't want to follow it, but we feel forced to. Um, and which is probably true for a lot more of them, but on their own, when they're with their friends, they're not following it. And that was great to hear, because now we know that the coming generation is going to care less about the caste divide. It's going to disintegrate further. And probably this is a nice time to have conversations about what inclusion actually means, to get into this messy subject of reservation and have those conversations. But I think on our part, as a little organization formed of one person with some ideas and a whole bunch of youth with so much of gung ho in them, to step up and say, we're going to find out about this, we're going to go and research. I think learning about the problem in the way we can. We may not have pulled out some major reports. We may not have been able to conduct a really huge and stellar research. We don't have the training or the funds. We just used our brains and did what we could. And anyone can do that, really. Yeah. So this is the kind of work we enjoy doing. And I think it's also what makes HaiJalo quite special, is that we take civic action in a way that is fun, and that is a lot of personal growth in it. There is room for growing as a person, as a spiritual being, as a skilled being, and in the process, you are also serving your community. What's more beautiful than that?
That's a beautiful sharing indeed. So, yeah, how just creating that safe space for people to just explore, ask questions, and try and seek those answers, and also to learn a lot in the process to grow as a person. And maybe also you mentioned about gardening or like farming and using our hands, being in nature, and then going out there doing research, going on ground, and then having that spirit of inquiry and doing things together as a community. So yeah, those are all some beautiful takeaways from your journey with HaiJalo. And yeah, and I also remember you mentioning your current batch of fellows have been working on climate change education. So also, so one is the activism side where you're trying to figure out how to work things out on a systemic level with the government departments, and another part of it is working with children and in schools and trying to build that climate change awareness, and then bringing in that knowledge aspect which is also missing today, and also how to make it more interesting, more approachable, more relatable for people, and exciting as well. It's like, and in a way that we feel connected to it and can really understand and make sense of the whole thing. So, how have you been working on this climate change awareness? What are some strategies you've been following to make it more approachable and interesting? And
Um,
how have the children been responding to that? You like to share?
yeah, that's a
And
great question. I think this
even
connects
the
to many
process of the fellows
conversations
for designing it as well.
all around from here. We draw youth through this program. They're interviewed. They were coming in for a period of 5 months, during which we about 25% of our time is in teaching English, 25% of our time is in teaching digital skills. The rest of the time they learn about and work on social issues. So we start the first month by just delving into some of the more popular, more prevalent, rather, social issues of this area: caste discrimination, poverty, substance abuse, gender discrimination, environmental issues we don't touch at this point. So we look at mostly things affecting people directly. And in each of these topics, we go a bit deeper. We ask, what is it exactly? We watch videos. Um, we make it a very interesting class. For instance, in our disability class, we usually spend about 2 hours um, without one of our senses, or somebody will be blindfolded, someone will have earphones plugged in so they are unable to hear. Someone will have a hand tied behind their back so they can't use it, or unable to walk. And we actively go about trying to do tasks in this state. And that is it's really the awakening for you. Oh my god, can you imagine being having this for life? And on top of that, the judgment, and on top of that, the lack of opportunity. And so we try and create more experiential learning experiences around these topics. In the second month, we start moving into environmental issues. So we explore topics like food security, the relationship between environmental issues and human population growth, evolution of man, and also evolution of man's thinking around the environment, man as humankinds, right? Um, we looked at soil pollution, water pollution, air pollution, and several other topics or areas of this before we actually came to climate change, because we felt it was super important to first understand what is the mindset that got us here. And in this way, we entered about understanding about climate change really in the third month of the fellowship of the program. And then once our fellows itself, so students who had been with us in the last batch, we picked 5 of them to work as fellows this time, and they organized awareness sessions for the rest of the students who were part of the third batch. So they're just 1 year senior, but there's been such a tremendous growth in their confidence, in their ability to read and learn by themselves. They organized these awareness sessions for the batch, for our students, and then together with them designed school sessions. How can we have interactive school sessions? We also use the web of life activity quite often, which is, I think, is quite common. It's used in a lot of places, using a ball of wool and kids standing in a circle, and each one of them is given a little chit and it says who they are. So someone is birds, represents birds, somebody is the forest, someone is the air, someone is the soil, then you have animals, human beings, all of them have a role to play. And then we start reading out, how are they related? So they say that, okay, human beings eat crops and grow crops, so humans are connected to the farms. And then birds also eat from the farm, so birds are also connected. So we keep passing around this ball of wool until there's a web of sorts that's connecting the entire group. um, then we start reading out the story of how things started going wrong, what went wrong, and then we say who does it affect, and then we say, okay, because of this, or we started using pesticides in our fields and it started affecting the bees. So now the bees will kind of sit down. The bees are connected to plants and to pollen. So automatically there's a tug on that string that's connecting them, and very soon the entire group is like, ma'am, it's hurting, it's hurting. And we're like, this is what's happening to the earth. I mean, yeah, of course we don't let them suffer in pain. We wrap it around twice or thrice so you can loosen it. But uh yeah, this is one great way to show them how the earth is connected and how, changes in one part have repercussions on other beings, on other parts of the earth, and other systems. So, yeah, that's, I think, this is one of my favorite activities because it really sends the message home. So, this was also a testing ground. We went to around 8 schools, they did these sessions. We tried to learn from them, and we also realized that things like, they know the terms, they know what is atmosphere, they know what is climate, they know what is weather. It's all by hearted from their textbooks. They know it in that sense. But that's why
It's all
it's called a
vague,
biological
abstract,
learning.
not relatable. Yeah,
Yeah, it's definitely not relatable.
yeah,
But
yeah.
more than that, it's because the style of learning here is just go, by heart it, come for the exam, retain it long enough to write it in the paper. After that, nobody really cares. So they're not able to connect two things because they've just by hearted them. And now, how to connect them, that we are finding that to be the difficulty. And that's when we realize that maybe we need to take a step back and do more basic stuff, or actually, we'll be starting with basic concepts in geography if we want to do this long term with any school. And right now we don't have the funding to do it. I would love it if we could test this in 5 or 6 schools. Um, but as of now we don't, and not just test this, but test behavior change. Can we talk to these kids and make them and raise awareness in a way that they are not just ordering online like crazy tomorrow every time they have a bit of spare money. That they're not like, oh, I need new clothes, oh, I need clothes in this color, I need to have this because someone else has it. So is there a way to create that actual change here? Because we are living in an area where people are so frugal that their homes and their finances were not rocked during the time of coronavirus. In fact, they were investing money in cows, in farming, despite the main working member of the house having lost their job. In many cases, I wouldn't generalize it, but in a lot of cases. So, where you come from a community that is great at being frugal, but suddenly you're, this dazzling possibility that you could have it all and it's available at the touch of a button. Is there a way to work on that as well? Because you can only imagine that with India's population, if everybody started consuming like that, what kind of a soup the whole world could be in. Um, and I'm not just putting this resting this squarely on our shoulders only, but yeah, it could be devastating even for India, because can we really produce that much and at what cost? But that's a different conversation. So those are conversations we would like to get into, but do them in a way that is not like, no, humans, you people are bad. We're trying our way around that. Right now, we did awareness sessions with middle schoolers. We're organizing a forest festival to try and bring people back, to the forest, especially the current generation, which has not been into of youth, has not really been into farming. They've not been encouraged to farm, and as a result, they're not close to forests either. So they're not close to their natural environment. So as a path back, is there things like this that we can do? So we are trying that. We're also we had fixed meetings with a couple of government departments. So far, we've only been able to meet with the forest department, and there was a lot of great learning there about forests and how they're managed. And a sadly, like quite a rude awakening that hey, nothing really is happening on the ground about climate change. Um, Actually speaking, or nothing is happening from that perspective. They may be growing forests and maintaining them to an extent, but not knowing what is the requirement, what is the carbon sink that we have committed to developing. What is things like carbon neutrality, what is the role of forests, what are the role of various trees, what is the action plan actually comprise of. Well, it's been written for, to be the forest department as the nodal agency, but we're realizing that that's not really playing out on ground. So what now? you know and that's a big question for us as youth, as residents of this place, in an area that is highly vulnerable to climate change and the impacts of it. What is our role now? What do we do? So yeah, I think those are the questions that lie ahead of us, and there's some indication that there is interest on part of the youth. I think without this program happening, we probably would not get to see or hear what I'm about to tell you. Mm, we had a career session recently, and we asked youth to kind of narrow down. We gave them a whole lot of options and did a lot of like, what do I like, what do I not like, what kind of person am I, a lot of those kind of exercises to try and pick out 6 careers, each person, that they would be interested to explore. And we had, at least in a group of 15 youth, we had 5 that, one of their choices was social worker. We have a bunch of them who want to be primary school teachers. We have people that are, 2 of them that are very interested, leaning towards green businesses, actually, in their top 3 options. And, you know, that is where I say that that makes the difference. If you are providing the right kind of education, then you're going to get the kind of result that could that demonstrates that a better world is possible, slowly, but is possible. So I think we need more HaiJalos or similar.
Through your journey, we can see that youth, when they are given those opportunities to explore, to really understand the various ways that they can contribute, they actually are interested in contributing. And also, many of the efforts which you are doing, it shows that okay, there is a way to actually retain the youth within their village itself to help contribute to their own society, their own people, their own environment, rather than uh, migrating towards some kind of idea of development which may or may not work for them. So some, it might be for some people, but it may not be for everyone. It shows the possibilities that exist and how we can strive towards them if we only are given that chance to explore. There are a lot of challenges that are there. So, how do you actually keep the inner child alive in all this? Like climate change or this issue, that issue. So all of that, it just maybe can pull us down. But then when we think about all the problems that we face, but then how can we navigate all of that and stay centered, stay sane, and also continue contributing towards them, raising our voice for truth, and also going together as a community and keeping that inner child alive, that sense of wonder, that sense of curiosity, that excitement, that exploration.
I want to answer this by with the disclaimer that I am not the poster girl for keeping the child alive or inner care. I'm really not. I, Sometimes I find that I'm so boring. Like, I'm constantly muddled in the details, and yeah, I struggle with it myself. Very recent revelation is that I had been getting therapy to help with my anxiety, and my therapist asked me to write down a list of every tiny achievement and big one that I could think of for the entirety of my life. I got bored into like 1.5 page. I'm sure that there's not bragging, is that everybody has a lot of achievements. I'm sure we can all fill up at least 5 pages of a book. And then she asked me to pick 5 to celebrate, and my face was one of horror. Celebrate? How? Why? How? There's so much more to be done. And I guess that's how I've, like, it's the reasons are like very deep rooted in things like my upbringing, or just who I am as a person. um, but it was so hard for me to do that, and that's who I am. How do you do it? Look, to stay sane, because climate change really really bothered me at one point. I think it bothered me until the time I realized that I'll probably be dead before the worst stuff happens. um yeah. And I actually took a course in climate psychology, to try and work through the anxiety with a professional and a group of people. It was a group course, Mm, I tried that. It helped. It helped actually quite at a deeper level, and just like the results showed. Mm, but what do I do? I think living in the mountains is something that has helped me in that sense. Otherwise, I probably would have been someone that went straight from the office to home, to the office again the next day, and occasionally went out with friends. Um, I think here I like dabbling in mud. So I like doing a bit of farming when I get a chance. I love spending time with the farm animals. Like we have two cows and two dogs right now. So I like playing with them. I've built it into my routine a little bit of spending time with them, um, either feeding the dogs or running around with them. Just a leashless walk. In the mountains. I like staying out at night on my balcony, despite how cold it is, with a torch and looking out for leopards. I saw one. I've seen only one in the 5 years I've been here. Um, very recently, just this week. I'm really, really stoked about it. Very excited. Um, I like walking through the forest. Sometimes I'll collect, leaves that have fallen and then put them into books, and then I love to go back to them and see, how they're shaping up later, how they look. I think a lot of my inner child finds a space to play in nature. That's how I am. When I'm around people, I'm a bit more serious, but when I'm in nature, I get to just be like age is forgotten. Um, just it's a sense of living, and nothing else matters. Yeah, so that's something I like. But I'm definitely the wrong person for this question. I'm working on it. I'm trying. And because I work with youth, and that's I know it doesn't sound quite right. Um, I work with youth, I work with younger people. It keeps me young, it does. I'm not really great at working with children. I don't feel like I have the energy for children. I'm a bit more, okay, focused and let's get something done. We goal oriented, and that makes it easier for me to work with youth. But I like sometimes letting go and just fooling around with them, um, taking silly photographs, or I used to really go at them hard for how many selfies they used to click, the students. And then after some time, I was like, you know what, just let it go. Let's click some with them. So I think giving in and submitting to to their age and to where they are at in life and to who they are in the world, the way it is currently, sometimes just letting it be. And that I'm hoping that's also a mark of being a child, when you submit to your surroundings and to whatever the world is. I'm hoping that qualifies. That's me trying.
That's lovely. It's a journey, actually, to keeping that alive. And you're right. In nature, we feel liberated in a way because the open landscape and in nature, every being is just existing. They're doing their own part, and they all
Mm.
are doing things together as well in nature. So everything is free, and as well as they are serving their own purpose in a way. So, and in nature we can find a lot of joy and that sense of play as well.
Mm.
Even in childhood, maybe
Yeah.
when we used to climb trees or just have fruits, so all of that, those little joys are where we can reconnect back to the simple things in life that really matter.
Yeah.
And also the thing about the you know the gloom and doom and gloom of the problems that we are faced with today. So maybe in a way, that sense of community, as you were talking about, that uh, I remember you were saying that at HaiJalo you just sit together and have a safe space for sharing. So those kind of circles where you can just share and um be together, hold space for each other, and whether it's grief, whether it's joy, uh, whether it's conversation, whether it's learning. So, doing things together as a community, going on that journey together. So, that can do something really special for people.
Yeah, yeah, it can.
What are the ways if people listening to your story, what are the ways in which they can contribute to your cause in some way, right from the smallest support, those nudge of support, to a deeper commitment? So what are the various ranges in which people can support your cause
Okay.
and be a part of it?
Great. So, one way that, of course, is for people to, you know, come join us. And when I say join us, there's like the slate is quite wide open in how they could, draw their journey with us. Um, People wanting to volunteer, although we prefer having volunteers
Mm,
for at least 2 months at a time because it takes a while to find
mm,
one's bearing around the mountains if you're coming
mm,
here on ground. There's also opportunities to volunteer online if we have the requirement and time and space to coordinate with people. Uh, we do require more and more people talking about the kind of work they do and more exposure to different kinds of careers, especially in the alternative field, especially in the development sector or green jobs, social enterprises, people running them, people working at them, people working in renewable energy. Or any kind of green venture or something that benefits society in a way. So that's something that we would love to have. I'd like to think that in some way, all of us who are even working at HaiJalo make some financial contribution to the place. Sometimes it's in terms of like the days we put in overtime work. Sometimes we're literally, buying little things that are needed, or just putting money back in, um, or just being patient for the funding to roll around and for us to get paid our salaries. Uh, and anybody who comes in as a financial contributor to HaiJalo is, for us, it's not just that. We handwrite letters to our donors ever so often. We pick herbs for them and sun dry them ourselves, package it and send it to them. We really see them as people that are part of the community, people that we care for. We pray for them during Navratri, you know. Um, we do very intimate calls with our donors. We ask them to sometimes, come in and share a talent, teach us a song or something like that. So it's not just about, I mean, it's okay if someone doesn't have the time and they would just like to, here's my money, use it well. We can do that, yes. But it would be much nicer if you got to know us and if we could get to know you. And if this could be that one space where you have an alternate family. You have a different family, just a family of people that are fun. And there's so much of lessons and so many things that people can also learn from the youth here, from the way people in the mountains live. I think Champawat has a lot to teach people. So it's also about what we can give to people. So if somebody is interested and they want to learn more, they want to explore, we try and create a space where that can happen for them. So yes, we take volunteers, we take interns. We are very happy to work um, with people who want to financially contribute or connect us to people in some way. One of the things that we particularly struggle with is that I'm the only person right now on the team who can do things like write proposals or send them off, etc. I get a bit of help from Manvendra, my husband. Um, but he's also really busy. So people with professional skills that can come and help us raise that little funding that we need to keep going. That would be really nice. Or if there's somebody out there that knows someone who runs a company, even if it's a small company, if you know someone who is a business owner and that business can give a contribution, however small, maybe they can do like, a, I don't know, 200, 500, 1,000 rupees a month. Even if that's it, we want to be connected, yes, because we feel like there is so much more that we can do mutually. So yeah, those are some of the things that we have in mind. So the ways people can come aboard.
That's lovely, and keeping that circle of sharing open, where we share our time with each other, we share our learnings and or any kind of resources, and it's beyond money, and also keeping that relationship intact.
Yeah.
And I saw that I think you had a call with people, an interaction with the fellows, where the fellows were sharing their journey,
Yeah.
and the supporters were also invited to be a part of it. And it was really heartwarming connection to see how people can share space with each other and share that journey with each other. So that sharing was really heartwarming.
Thank you.
So my best wishes to you.
थैंक यू सो मच. ये है जानकी दी. ये हमारी वैसे तो मकान मालकिन है. हम जहाँ रहते हैं पिछले 5 साल से, जब से चंपावत में आई हूँ. लेकिन अब तो दोस्ती काफी. या इट्स अ वेरी अनयूजुअल फ्रेंडशिप. बहुत ही पता नहीं, दीदी भी कहती है पता नहीं कहाँ से कैसे भगवान ने ठान लिया. वरना मुंबई से कोई लड़की, और फिर आई डोंट थिंक, शायद ये लिखा ही हुआ था किसी तरह से, वरना कैसे बन पाता ना. बिल्कुल,
वरना कहाँ मिल पाते. कुछ
वरना
ना कुछ तो कनेक्शन होगा जो
हाँ.
भगवान ने हमको मिला दिया. मैं तो भगवान का भी शुक्रिया करती हूँ जो रूथ को मिला दिया. जिसका हाथ है रूथ पे मिलाने में, सबका शुक्रिया अदा करती हूँ.
वी आर वेरी क्लोज. बहुत, मतलब अभी मुझे यहाँ पे काम करने की क्षमता हमेशा था मेरे अंदर ना, लेकिन यहाँ पे टिके रहने की एक जो मदद, जिसके बिना ये सब काम नहीं हो पाता, तो वो इनके पास से, दीदी के पास से आ गया. एंड एकदम अकेले नए जगह में आना, गांव में आना, जहाँ पे यहाँ के सारे लोग एक दूसरे को अच्छे से जानते हैं, अच्छी पहचान है. मैं तो घूमते घूमते रास्ते पे सबसे नमस्ते कहने लगी, सोच के कि चलो मेरे भी कुछ दोस्त बनेंगे टाइप के ना. पर ठीक है, मुझे ज्यादा दूर जाना नहीं पड़ा, नीचे वाले फ्लोर में मिल गई मेरे को. है ना. और मैं इनको इसलिए मतलब लाना चाहती थी ना हमारे कॉल में, क्योंकि बहुत बार लोगों को अच्छा लगता है किसी इंटरेस्टिंग व्यक्ति के मोटिवेशनल बातें सुनना, या जिन्होंने कुछ काम किया है ना, कि वो क्या काम करते हैं, उन्होंने कैसे यहाँ तक आ गए, लेकिन उनके पीछे किसका हाथ था वो कोई नहीं जानता है. महात्मा गांधी के नाम तो सभी लोग जानते हैं, शायद बहुत ही कम लोग उनकी मम्मी के या किसी और के नाम जानेंगे जिन्होंने इनको सपोर्ट किया. तो आई फील कि उतना ही जो है क्रेडिट शेयर होने चाहिए जो केयर गिवर होते हैं उनके साथ, है ना. और गांव में भी अगर, जैसे आप कह रहे हो, अगर कोई काम करने जा रहे हैं, तो उनको वहां पे अगर ऐसे कोई मिले जो उनको सपोर्ट करे, तो उनका काम बहुत अच्छे से हो पाता है. आगे उस जगह को समझना, वहां के जैसे रीति रिवाज, तौर तरीके समझना, वो भी इम्पोर्टेंट होते हैं. क्योंकि उसके बिना शायद मैं बहुत गलतियां करती. आजकल मैं कहीं पे जाती भी हूँ, लोग मुझे, या तो मैं किसी को कुछ देती हूँ तो 2 टुकड़े या 4 टुकड़े देती हूँ, और बोलती भी हूँ कि मेरी दीदी ने मुझे सब सिखाया कि पहाड़ में 1 और 3 नहीं देते हैं, 2 या 4 देते हैं, है ना. तो छोटी छोटी चीजें इस तरह के, जिससे मतलब समझ में आया कि कि ऐसा है. एक खंबा जो है मेरे लाइफ की, जिसपे मेरे जितने भी एफर्ट्स है, मेरे जितने भी प्रयास है, उस पे टिके हैं. यही है वो.
So that, my friends, was the story of HaiJalo. The website, social media handles, contact information are all linked in the show notes. So I hope you'll connect with the team, show your support and love, and really connect with these wonderful people and keep that bond alive. So on that note, how do you think we can empower youth to become change makers? What are your ideas, your thoughts on the things we discussed? I'd love to know what you think in the comments below. Let's have a conversation. This is GoGreenGuru Sustainability in Action. And this is me, Ananya, signing off.